Hello, today we'll talk about solid principle, which is one of the most widely used design pattern. And we're not going very deep into solid principle, but we'll just build a simple console app that complies with solid. So solid is an acronym for S as in single responsibility principle, O as an open close principle, L as in list scope substitution principle, I as an interface segregation principle, and D as in dependency inversion principle. So we'll just briefly touch each of these 5 principles in Visual Studio. So let's just go ahead and create a simple .NET Core console app application. And let's just name it as a post system. So let's go ahead and save it to our file, solid principle, okay? And let's just create it. So we have our Visual Studio here, and what we are trying to build is a simple posting system where users are allowed to create some kind of post and save it to the database. We will not use database actually, but we will make use of list to store all those posts. So let's just try to mimic our database. So what I will do is I'll just add a new folder over here, name it a model. So let's create a new class called post model. So we'll define all those properties over here. So this is gonna be okay. So the first thing I can think of is ID, and second thing I can have is a string, so which will be actual description of the post. So this is our post model, and now let's create a kind of database out of this model, and let's name it databases. So let's create a class called database. Now let's make it a public, and over here we want to create a list, right? So it's gonna be like protected and make it like read only. So it's gonna be a list, and so now the list we have our post model defined. So let's just make it a post model, and let's resolve the namespace, and let's name it as a database. Okay, and also we might want to have ID or like a count of ID. So let's just name it as a count, and let's create our constructor. Let's initialize our count as a 1. So the first item will have the ID of 1, and let's initialize our database in our constructor so we don't get null pointer exception. Okay, so this is our database, and we want to have a couple of methods over here. Something like, user can add their post to the database or list in our case. So let's create a method called add post, and we'll pass a parameter called, let's say, post. So now we will store this post into the list. So what I can do is database, and we can add that to our list. So we have our post model. So let's just create one, and with our ID will be ID count. And similarly, our post will be the post that we just passed. So this will create a list and store the post inside. And after that, we want to increase our count by 1. Okay, so we have our add post method. Let's just increase the font size so it is kind of visible. Okay, so this sounds cool. And on top of that, we might want to give some kind of toString method so we can print it out. So let's do public override toString. Okay, and we actually do not need this return statement right now. So what we'll do is we'll create a empty string as a result, and over here we'll have to loop our database. So our post model, we name it as a database, and in our database, okay, so we're gonna loop it, and we will create some kind of string result. So let's just format our string. So by the way, let's just put the $sign, and I want to put a new line, and let's print out the ID. So we are trying to print object, so we have to put it inside double curly braces. So db dot, and it's going to be the ID. And similarly, let's print out the post. Put the curly braces and db dot post. Like I said, this will print it out, and let's just return it as a result. Okay, cool. So this is our simple database that we have created. Now let's go to our main method over here, and we don't need this actually. And what we want to do is we want to instantiate our database. Create a database. db is new database. So let's just import this database first, and okay, so we have our database ready, and we have a main method. Now let's just go ahead and create our actual class called post. So what I'm gonna do now is I'll just create a new folder called implementation. Okay, so inside this I am going to create a new class called post. So this is our main class. So what we want to do over here in this class is we want to call this we want to add the post to our database. So let's just create a new method called create post, and we have to specify where do we want to save this post. So like we are trying to save it to our database, so let's just do db and let's resolve this namespace. And what do you want to store? We want to store post. Cool. And we will actually call the method in our database that's called add post. So which will add and pass the post over here. Okay, so we have our post class already, and in our main method we can just call this method. So we'll go to our main method, and over here let's create post. Let's rename this, okay, and let's go ahead create a post. And actually, like, okay, let's just create a post, and the first parameter is going to be database, which is db in our case, and the second will be the post string. So let's just do hello, this is my first post. Alright, so let's create the same one again, and let's do like hello, this is my second post. Alright, so we have our database. Let's print it out to the console. So we have our toString method in db, so we can just specify db. So like, let's try to run this. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we get, okay, ID1, ID2. This is my first post. This is my second post, okay. We have our skeleton setup.